Hey, everybody, this is Barry Mankin with the Holistic Home Health Podcast. We're here in Nashville, Tennessee, and this is our fifth episode now. So we are right in the middle of allergy season. And so we want to just give a simple talk on allergens, ways that we can be preventative, and talk about typically what we see this time of year. So right off the bat, I want to thank you for watching. We're very excited to have this launch this year and just provide some good information for people. We just came off the heels of a two-part series with mold remediation through EPS, which is probably one of the top remediators, if not the top remediator in Nashville, Tennessee here. So they do a great job with everything related to mold remediation. They get into some drying as part of a process, but mainly the removal. They get into some bacterial, that sort of thing. But we went pretty in depth. That's why we did a two-part series there for that particular segment. So we're coming off the heels of that. We're jumping right into allergens, and we're just going to talk about the spring. So my personal experience with this right now is I deal with the tree pollen, mainly the oak trees, and my eyes get irritated, and I'll feel a little sluggish. Typically, that happens to me. So we just have to, build up our immunity. We have to stay healthy. We have to eat well. As I have my coffee next to me, that's full of stuff in it. But the idea is we have to be preventative, okay? At the end of the day, it's about prevention and source control. Those are our top two things that we talk about all the time, no matter what the contaminant is. So in the case of allergens, what we're trying to do is prevent those histamine responses that we have in our bodies. And obviously, I'm not a doctor, but from an interior standpoint, what happens is if our overall load of our dust mites, whatever particulates are in the air that we try to manage all the time, any of those influences, pet dander, along with that outside, as soon as we open that door, we're bringing in whatever's outside. So whatever's floating around as it relates to tree pollen and, grass pollen, all of the botanicals that are out there, all of that's coming inside. And so what happens is our body, gets an irritant. We have, through a process, we end up with a histamine response, and that creates inflammation. So that's the short. Whenever that happens, obviously we're uncomfortable. We don't want to function in the same way. It drags our body down. Our job is to try to get the interior of that home as healthy as possible as it relates to these influences. So what do you do this type of season? During this season, we typically talk about our top seven things to do in the house, right? So other than, again, source control, which is you stay indoors a little bit more, pick your times when you go outside, making sure that your influence is, from a time standpoint, dramatically reduced, especially if you have trouble with that. I'm not a fan. I'm not a huge medicine fan. Histamine blockers work for people, and I think they have their place, when you just need to do that. But in my opinion, source control is first. So change some habits. That's an easy thing to do where you're not putting anything in your body, So that's the simple thing, but we all have to work, we all have to live, we all have to go get groceries, etc. So you got to be out in it at some point. Maybe pick your times. So as an example, we just had some recent flooding here, some rain, that sort of thing, where we're going to talk about any kind of remediation or restoration related to water damage in another segment coming soon. We're going to try and get Don Nahr here from I just talked to him. Blue Chip. Sorry, Blue Chip Restoration. So Blue Chip Restoration, We're going to talk in another segment about all that. But because of the moisture content that's been in the air, the good thing on the allergen side is that it has knocked down a lot of these things that were airborne. So at the end of the day, your main influence is, in our opinion, the air. So everything comes through either a particulate or a gas, right? So what we're trying to do is minimize that influence. If you're going outside, maybe you change the times that you do that. When the dew is down, when the air is still heavy, before the sun comes out, lightens everything up and brings stuff in the air when the wind is blowing. If you know you got storms coming soon, before that wind starts flowing again, just pick your times, okay? And so you change some habits. You'll also have your house buttoned up a little bit. And we'll talk about managing all that in your house as well. The other thing, if you, I don't know if you've noticed in some of these commercial applications, when you're going into a store, as an example, the doors will open automatically, and you'll feel this air curtain come down and blast you with air. Why do they do that? It's because of what you're bringing in to that building. So we don't think about that when we're going into our house, a big air blast or an air curtain, but not a bad idea. Whatever you're carrying, whatever is on you from the outside, you are bringing into an enclosed space or another environment, if you will. So you're coming from the outside environment to the inside environment. So other than picking your times where things are just weighed down and maybe things are not getting to you just because they're out of your airspace or it's diluted enough and out of your airspace that you're not subject to it. And then when you come into a indoor environment, you're, again, just shaking off your clothes, thinking about what you're bringing in. Where have you been? Take your shoes off. Take your jacket off. Remember Mr. Rogers? Anybody? So he would say it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, right? And he would take off his stuff, and it was more so he could relax. But what happens is, as soon as we open a window, as soon as we walk in that door, we're bringing with us whatever is from an ambient air is outside and whatever is on us from any of those locations. So shoes, big deal. You see a lot of people that are sensitized, especially, they're mindful of these things. And we just have to be aware of these things and just create some other habits. So those are simple things to employ. Then, again, take your jacket off, shake it out outside before you even open that door. Maybe there's some ceiling fans under a covered porch and you have them on 24/7. Maybe they're, if we want to get really crazy, motion activated so that when you walk in, it does the same thing as an air curtain. Not a bad idea. Little things, okay? So it's about being intentional with this stuff. And again, we'll talk about that here in a moment with our top 7. That's kind of a teaser. The other thing to think about with all of this is other things than just pollen can be an allergen. Once we're inside, we're dealing with the dust mites. We're dealing with the other residual effects of mold, maybe just residual mold that is built up. Again, we're talking about our overall load in the house, if you will, of contaminants. So, from a management perspective, after we deal with what we're bringing into the house, what we have in our car, all the things that we're subject to that we're going to bring to our healthy environment, we just don't want to bring any of that other stuff in other than the negative pressure that's already on the house. It's already trying to bring stuff in on its own just by the nature of the build. If it's an older home, you're going to have a lot more influences with that. So we want to talk about all of that stuff as well. Let's get to the top 7. As it relates to the practical things, this is something that we give to everybody when basically, if we're looking at a baseline assessment on a house when we come and do an investigation, if we are even just doing a consultation. If you don't have a specific source, which is always number one, source control is number one. if you don't have a specific source that you either need to manage or find first, and that's where all the controversy lies, is how to find a source and is there a source? We can talk about that too, but typically once you deal with a better, what we call a baseline in the house, to where you have normal living conditions, everything is static, everything is where it sets for a normal house that has normal conditions, no history of water influence, or that it was remediated appropriately, all that was found, and we don't have anything hidden behind the wall from ongoing or previous sources. HVAC comes in as a wild card with that. As long as we don't have that going on, here's our top 7. Move the air. So different ways to move the air. Typically, we're dealing with fans. If you don't have a ceiling fan, I know all the ladies love ceiling fans. So from a decor standpoint, they're usually not going to implement something like that, or they usually take them out, right? So I see that all the time, especially some of these newer houses. And that's okay, but we need movement. So there has to be some fans in there that I'm going to argue needs to be outboard. Other than you can't just depend on your HVAC to do this, okay? So again, that's argued a lot. Here's why this comes into play and why this is argued. Basically, you're reaching equilibrium for your moisture. It's that food and water concept that we've talked about before. All you need is food and water to feed these things. Other than them floating around and being dormant, if you're going to feed this stuff with moisture, we need to manage the moisture. Typically, we do that through conditioning. In the winter, you do that through the heating process, and then your moisture levels naturally are dissipated. But if you're managing the food side and the moisture side, just with some movement, so this is part of a process. You want to, reach equilibrium, mix the air, if you will, so that it's 45 to 50% over here, it's 45 to 50% over there. This room, upstairs, dare I even say the crawl. All of that should be in that range, especially your living space or your conditioned space. The reason that's important is because you have, if you just imagine a invisible graph of the moisture meter, it's like a big U. You've got your dry conditions on this side, so typically we address that more in the winter. And then you've got your wet side over here. Viruses thrive in dry conditions. Other than the content itself being lighter and more available to affect you, which goes to allergens, all these things that are on these particulates, they're more available. They're in the air. They're floating. So if we're mixing this air, we're part of a process for getting the moisture to where it's balanced, and B, getting the particulates managed through air currents. Air currents are huge. That's the delivery. Think of a highway. It's a delivery system for all these particulates, allergens, dust mites, mold, etc. If we get them out of our airspace, unless there's a source that's continuing to feed that, it's not getting to you, right? Therefore, you're not going to get affected in your house. That's first, air movement. That's number one. Number two, we need to monitor our relative humidity. We just alluded to that. So a simple hygrometer is cheap. That's great insurance for your house. Do not depend on your little air purifier. Do not depend on your HVAC. I don't care how good your HVAC system is. It's going to be that thermostat's going to be located right at the point of entry, typically or at least in close proximity to your return. Okay? So that's drawing everything in, which is a false sense of what the humidity really is because of an air current. We want to see where everything is leveled out with equilibrium and put it more centrally located, but away from that thermostat or away from your return, so we can see what is docile or what is actually suspended as it relates to your humidity. And that gives an idea of what that space looks like as it's been conditioned. Or, even if it's a nice season, you got the windows open, you'll at least know what's in the house. So 45 to 50% is your goal all the time. The other thing that you need to be aware of is fresh air makeup. So other than monitoring that relative humidity, every level and the crawl, usually a sensor that does Bluetooth, you want to talk about fresh air makeup. Now, fresh air is not always fresh in Tennessee. It's only fresh if it's fresh. Get it? All right. So the idea is that we want to make sure we regulate, just like I talked about coming in from the outside, brushing that stuff off, being mindful of your shoes. Where have you been? What are you bringing to your home? Being mindful of what's your puppy bringing into the home? What's your cat bringing into the home? Which we'll talk about that here in a minute. The kids, where have they been, right? All of these things. Again, this is not like I'm not trying to say that to scare you. It's just an awareness, right? And it's just to change habits. So in the same manner, what are you bringing in as soon as you open that window for fresh air? If it's a nice day, everybody wants to live in open air conditions, right? That's what we were designed to do. However, we build these boxes and we create a microclimate that we live in, and that we are now competing with all these other biologicals and all these other irritants. We're competition, basically, which is why we have all these troubles. However, we own the place, or we're at least renting and paying for it. Everybody else that's hanging out in there is somebody that you're responsible for. So, and I mean the other biologicals. So when you open that window, what are the conditions outside? I tell everybody all the time, look at the weather app. What's on that weather app? It's either going to say, okay, you got great conditions, or it's poor, you got ragweed, you got allergens, you've got mold. You know, what are the counts outside that are available for you to be subject to? Whether it's talking about going outside or whether you're bringing it inside by bringing the fresh air in. So again, remember, fresh air is only fresh if it's fresh. So times, just like going outside, what are the times that you could do that? The dew is usually down, especially as we get into the summer, in the morning, because we get that temperature differential between evening and morning. That magic dew point happens, which, that happens outside just like it happens inside. What does that do? That makes everything heavy, right? Because it's weighed down with water. So at least as long as there's not a lot of wind to still pick that up, most of that is down. That's a good time to open your window. It's going to be early. You should get up early every day anyway. It's good for you. Open that window. Let some of that air in. Know what you're bringing in. What's the air quality today? When's that going to start? Is it going to get bad at such and such time? Even if it's a half an hour, get some of that fresh air in, okay? That stale air that's been stuck in there that's affecting you. You want to get some live air in there. Now, again, what's out there? So if you're doing it during certain times, that's good. If the day is great and the mold counts are down and it's a little windy, now we're talking about particulates. So even if the air quality is good and you might have some other particulates, if you live, again, what are your conditions? Do you live in the woods? Do you have a lot of mulch and debris and stuff around the house? Do you have other contaminants outside? Do you live by an industrial complex? Right? Gases. Are we dealing with other conditions outside other than what's natural that we bring close to the house that we're going to be subject to, that we're going to bring inside? There's so many things that we're subject to. And again, we bring it in, then we got to manage it. Anything that comes into the house, you have to manage, okay? Whether that's from the construction of the building and all the things that are off-gassing, all the way to what we bring in on our shoe, okay? So, again, we're being mindful of these things. Fresh air makeup's only fresh if it's fresh. Last time I'll say that. Now, outside of that, here's where we get into management of cleaning. Deep clean. Allergen season in the spring, fall, leaves and debris, right? We're, at least in our climate here in Nashville, we're going to get buttoned up for the summer. We're going to get buttoned up for the winter, for energy, because we want to be comfortable, right? And the more comfort we have, the more problems we get, right? So we chase the money because we want to be energy efficient while we're comfortable. We pay for it in air quality, unless we're intentional, okay? So there's a balance between the energy efficiency and the air quality that we want to achieve. How do we do that? We gave you 3 already. The next is going to be a deep clean. Whatever you do bring in, even when you're mindful, I mean, you can't stop all of it, right? So, and you have a buildup or a load, if you will. What's the overall biological load? What's available to you to affect you? So if you're removing, it's always source. No matter if you have a problem or not, it's source control. So whatever's under your couch, whatever's under the bed, whatever's in the clothes that you haven't worn in months or years, whatever's on those books that we don't read enough, which you should read books, they're good for you. Whatever is in your HVAC, which we'll also talk about. It's all history, right? And that stuff builds up over time and it becomes available. When you are stuck with things with less dilution because there's less fresh air makeup during those seasons in the summer when it gets hot and nasty and we button up, we're stuck with everything. Whatever load we build up to, then we get stuck with where it's available for us to have irritants and to have histamine responses, chronic immune issues, all these other things. Wintertime is the same thing, right? But it does it in different ways. One season we're cooling, and there's available moisture. And the other season we're heating, and then there's more available debris, right? Viral contact, bacterial, and fungal. Remember, we talked about all that. So here's how this happens. We have this load. We have all this activity in the spring because it's nice. Weather's great. We're in and out. We have a busy family. We got the puppies. We got, all the things. Everything gets full of stuff, right? And you very well may clean amazing, and you probably have the cleanest house on the block, right? It doesn't matter. You still need to do the spring and fall cleaning. When I was growing up, with all the gray hairs that I have, it was a thing. It was, kids, it's Saturday. Guess what we're doing today? Move the furniture, get the drapes down, get the rugs out there, beat the rugs. We didn't really beat the rugs, but you get the concept. So that's what they used to do. The houses were 10 times more drafty, just from the build construction. They were built differently, right? And even then we still did it because you needed to. Now, our building codes are off the charts because we're building for fire and structure and trying to, mainly fire codes have pushed a lot of this. So the codes aren't for health anymore. Okay, so I should say never have been. The only thing that they've been doing here as of late is fresh air makeup for combustion typically. So as we button the house up for energy, we're chasing our tail. When we're doing that, we are subjecting ourselves to, again, a tighter house, and we're stuck with everything. So whatever's there, whatever's available, you're breathing, and you are the filter. So just remember that. Whatever load is in the house, you're the filter, and you just look at your magic box that you bought on Amazon and expect that to fix everything. Or you've got a better filter in your HVAC, and it's going to fix everything. That is baloney, okay? As good as those things are, I said this last time, Clint Eastwood says you got to know your limitations, okay? So he's a good philosopher. So with that said, the overall load, you have to have deep clean. Either you're doing it yourself or you're getting somebody to do it, Okay? So if you have a company that manages your house and they come in to do a cleaning regimen, just know that they need a bigger crew twice a year, especially if it's a seasonal thing like we have here, but at least once a year. Let's just say that. But typically, end of spring, end of fall, you need that deep clean where they're moving things. You may even look at professional cleaning as it relates to carpets and that sort of thing. Maybe you do that once a year. You have a different rotation. But the idea is that you're stepping up your game for your health. Because if the house isn't healthy, you're not healthy. All right? And it's easy to know that you need to clean when things look dirty. We're talking about a level beyond that. Okay, so and great job if you're doing all that stuff because everybody should have a clean house. However, what's really clean is kind of like the joke in our industry because we can see the things that you guys can't see. We have all the instrumentation to do it. We have different processes, different labs. For the sensitized individual especially, people that don't have a lot of tolerance for this stuff, you may need hospital-grade filtration, and the deep cleaning. So, again, there's levels of this. So, spring and fall deep clean, get under everything. And here's the other thing. Do you need to be the one doing it? Are you that sensitized individual? I'm going to tell you, you need to hire it out. Or get some people you love and put on a chore list and say, hey, if you want to do something for me, this would be great. And do it this way. Okay? So that'll make for good conversation. But that's a big deal. Get the overall load down so you're not managing as much in your air. Get it? Are we good? Great. So let's talk about HVAC. I think we discussed this in one of the other podcasts that we did. The importance of ductwork cleaning. It's the lungs of the home. Again, I think I alluded to before, we treat the house like a person whenever we're doing our investigations. All the concepts are the same, and it works. So when we're looking at the house like a person, we treat the internal air pathways as the lungs, as I clear my throat here from the allergens. So same thing. Let me give you the basics on this because this gets kind of nerdy. And we're actually going to get somebody here before the summer, probably the top mechanical contractor as it relates to air, Nathan Copeland with Copeland & Son. Shout out to him. He's brilliant. There's other guys we have too, and that are great. Integrity Heating and Cooling out here. Chris is fantastic. But as far as like the really, really bad stuff and the best guy that understands this more than anybody, I would say Nathan's kind of our top guy in town. So we're going to talk about just the basics with this. Here's what happens. We try to clean our air with our ductwork system, with marketing and advertising. So here's my question. How good's your filter in the house? And I'm not going to say what you think I'm going to say. It's the opposite of what you would think. In a moist climate like ours, which, again, this is where we're subject to, so this is what we typically will speak on. But a lot of people deal with moisture in the Midwest, in the South, on the coasts, etc. What's your restriction? What they call, they'll deal with static pressure, they'll deal with pressure drop related to performance of the system, which we're not going to get into today. They'll let Nathan deal with that stuff. But it all goes to condensation and how hard the system has to work. This system just kicked on as we speak, which is kind of funny. See? That was kind of trippy. So here's how this happens. Other than sizing of the ductwork, sizing of the tonnage for your cubic feet in the space you're trying to condition, and all the other things that go with that we trust the HVAC guys to do. Number one, most systems are already undersized. They're under-designed. And the reason that is because They're only required to do a minimum standard to achieve cooling at a certain temperature. So other than the building performance, part of that performance is the HVAC performance. So you're getting a D- system, basically. So you're not getting the race car. You're getting the Yugo in your house to do your HVAC. So what does that mean? In a moist climate and a restricted, back to the filter. Food and water, right? We talked about that concept. When you try to catch the food better at the HVAC system, and its main job is to pull moisture out efficiently to achieve its desired temperature. I'm talking mainly summertime and dealing with cooling, since we're getting into that season. You're putting the cart before the horse, okay? Not only does that stunt that process and take your performance down, it makes it work harder. If it makes it work harder, your energy bills go up. If your energy bills are going up, it's usually creating some form of heat within the system at the motor where you have the moving parts. The moving parts are going to wear out quicker because of the heat. You're going to wear your blower motors out quicker. You're going to strain the system, right? Plus, you're not going to get the efficiency of the moisture to be pulled out as it was designed at a D-. Go figure, which I'm not even going to talk about the new cooling delivery that they have now, which is even less efficient for the systems that are being improved. And I'll let Nathan talk about that. So you're not doing well to start with, typically. Then we put the cart before the horse. Put the cart before the horse. Then we'll put a better filter in there to catch the food. We create condensation because it can't keep up. And so it sweats a lot more. And what happens with that? Typically, depending on where your ductwork is and depending on what's in the ductwork, with that cleaning we talked about, food and water, you're trying to catch the food from going in, but what's the history that's already in there? It's got to be clean to start with. So let me just talk about the cleaning process. Number one, if you have a new house, it's not clean. All the construction debris is food. It's in there. You got to get it out of there to have a clean slate. You know, the construction guys say, oh, you're going to have dust for the next several months or maybe over a year. You just keep cleaning. No, like get it out of your air. You know, number one, it's an allergen, it's an irritant, depending on your own, issues with those particular contaminants. Let's get that stuff out of our airspace. So clean the ducts. If the food isn't on a hard surface, unless that hard surface is wet, it's not growing on the hard surface. It's the debris that's on the hard surface that's growing things. That's the food. Plastic, metal is not food for these things. So, get the organic material off of the inorganic material. Then you won't grow anything. So at a microscopic level, you're going to have to manage some things, different ways to do that. But clean it. Now, cleaning companies, not all of them are the same, which we preach all the time, and we're a bit biased because we started a ductwork cleaning company this past year, 3-in-1 duct cleaning. We're very proud of that process, which is different. So we use positive pressure instead of negative pressure, number one, during the process. The reason is damage can happen. Number one, I've seen ducts blown off of vents. I've seen damage to flex duct. I've seen damage to where it's actually collapsed hard duct, solid duct work. It draws in other contaminants from other areas during the process that maybe you didn't have before. So, and a lot of times these are in non-controlled spaces that nobody sees. So you can do that, cause damage, and then have a worse problem later on just by the system not being rated for that amount of pressure. So that's our biggest contention right off the bat. Number two, nobody does camera work, at least across the board. Some people might do one thing and not another thing, but nobody does comprehensively, in our opinion, the way we do. So camera work throughout to validate your process, okay? Before and after, if Jimmy Hoffa is laying in there and we finally find him and he's in your ductwork, we'll find him and we'll get him out of there, okay? Give him a proper burial because he was such a good guy. Sorry, we could go on and on tangents, but you'll take that. You will validate that process. The process usually has a whip of some kind, a rubber whip typically, unless you're dealing with some hard duct work, and we'll use maybe a little bit more agitation with some brushes, et cetera. But the main thing is we don't cause damage. If you have like nails or hard things in there and you're using, somebody's using a brush, the potential is for that to take that hard thing that it's trying to remove and suck out of there. If it's too heavy, right, that brush is going to take that and use that as a weapon. And it's going to damage the inside lining and create voids in your flex duct, which is, we have a lot of flex duct here. Again, you don't know. Then it's damaged. You don't know it's damaged. It's no different than having something blown off and then you're getting crawl space air, mice, all the things that come with that back in, depending on if you've got poison there for the mice, varmints, any kind of varmint. All right, so then attic, same thing. You get all the stuff that comes in from there other than varmints, insulation, etc. Anything can infiltrate and affect your living space air, which is where you don't want that to be affected. Non-controlled space and controlled space should be completely separate. So that can happen as well with brushes. So if you have a camera, you validate that A, the integrity of the system is good, B, that it's clean. C, you're going to do the coils and inspect the inside of that system. So cleaning the coils, there's so many different ways to do that, different products for that. We're going to want to focus on that. And then also look, okay, is the rest of this inside of this particular unit contaminated? Is it wet? Is there insulation inside there? That's wet. Is there history of debris in there? Is there mold growing in there? What's in the blower motor? If we can see the blower motor, when I say we, if they can see the blower motor, they're going to talk about that, and then we're going to refer. That's kind of like their line and say, okay, we don't do that. We'll get one of our HVAC people that we're connected with in our network and say, okay, you need next level cleaning, right? So their job is to hand that baton off to them at that point, let you know this is going to be a more expensive thing because they have to break the whole system down, power wash, different components, etc. Let them handle the unit at that point. But you need to know that so that the integrity of the system is clean. Then they'll look at the main lines. The main lines and the returns will typically get done first. And not everybody does a main line. I could name some names in this town. I'm not going to, but if it's the cheapest guy in town, there's a reason. It's not a comprehensive cleaning. And if it's not all completely clean, it's contaminated. Because as soon as that air turns on, you're blowing contamination onto clean things. Mold, bacteria, what have you. Any kind of particulate, dust mites, whatever. Bugs, all of the things that come with the degradation of any biological matter. Okay? You don't want that in your breathing space, in your house. So main lines and returns first is typically how they'll do it. Again, with the positive pressure, they're going to go in reverse, and you're actually going to see that process with a light, with a plexi, and they're going to draw out every feeder line or every supply line to every register. They're going to use an antimicrobial to wipe down every register. The inside of that boot gets wiped down with an antimicrobial as well. And then the delivery system comes, and the last thing they're going to do is basically a sanitization method with a light mist delivery of a natural botanical. And I know that's controversial for a lot of people. So if somebody doesn't want that, they don't have to do that. But the idea is for any small residual, anything that's left over that may or may not be visible, right? If it's visible, it should get cleaned off. But anything that's invisible that we just want to kind of give a level of insurance, that's what that's for, okay? That way it's clean, it's sanitized, and you can actually validate that whole process. All right? Does that all make sense? That's how ductwork cleaning should be done. Other than that, we talked about the filters earlier. I want to go back to the filters. We talked about a heavy MERV filter being the cart before the horse. Low MERV. So you want the least amount of restriction. Now, this is with a caveat, right? I've talked to all the filter guys, right? There's different ways to do this. But if you're just dealing with a simple system and like most people, you're going to have your filter located on the wall, and it's just a 1-inch filter application. I'm going to tell you low MERV filter, get a cheap filter. We have filters on our website. You can look at that if you want, but it's a bang for the buck kind of filter, right? It does a great job for the money, and it's low MERV. So, but this again goes to performance. The better you get, the worse your air quality gets because you create all these other things. So, low MERV, I would say an 8 or below is my advice. We have a 7 on ours. That's a 7 MERV. Now, this is without dealing with inline systems that are maybe rated and designed for a better application. As long as you have the right surface area, as long as there's the right thickness, you get better performance out of that, and you can go up on your MERV rating if you're getting something installed. April Air has a cool thing. I know Chris with Integrity installs those, and he has some good numbers. However, if you need hospital-grade filtration with great performance, there's other things out there, and there's another gentleman out there named John Ellis that we're going to promote and get on the podcast as well. He is the guru in our country, in my opinion. So we just took some classes with him this year, but he has a performance of hospital-grade filtration that I have never seen. I mean, it is, and the numbers are unbelievable. So if you want that good, I know Nathan installs those here in Nashville. So there's that. There's, but the overall concept is to make sure that you have low MERV rating unless you're doing something that's engineered and designed for that right pressure for the system so that you don't wear the system down. Usually it takes some upgrading on some return lines at least for that delivery, for performance. So again, there's levels of this stuff. But overall consensus is if it's a simple system, low MERV rating. Okay? We can all agree on that. So with that said, the last thing that you're going to look at is going to be some level of purification. What I would say is icing on the cake. You notice that I have not, and we have all that stuff on our website. However, I'm not promoting that, or I'm not making that as important as these other things, and all these other things are practical. Most of this is source control and practicality. Once you get things to a better overall load in your house with changing habits, understanding levels of cleaning, timing, managing moisture, airflow, dilution with fresh air makeup, which we'll talk about a little bit more. All these other things are really first. Then you want to buy a purifier if you just want better. Okay, so again, we've got all that stuff on our website. There's other levels of that. There's other applications for that get into large spaces with a big footprint. I just bought an IQ Air myself for hospital grade filtration since I won't be staying where I'm staying here too long, so we're not going to make the investment in our HVAC system till the next house. But until then, I've got some great filtration in the house, but my numbers are already good. I don't have any sources, right? So again, there's levels, but the footprint of this thing is huge. It's massive. My wife loves it. Sorry, honey. My contention is a little bit of offense and a whole lot of defense, okay? Defense is the biggest thing. It's just like winning a football game. unless you were the Rams back in the 90s. They had a lot of offense too. Because offense is controversial and because offense has some negative effects, we're going to talk about the basics of that. And what we're going to say is some level of ionization, different types of ionization, photocatalytic oxidation, hint of ozone, controversial, I know. Hint of ozone, it usually happens through that process anyway. UV, but different combinations of technology together creates a great offense because, once you combine those things and not just have just this or just this or just this, especially UV, you need time and proximity for UV. And everybody says, oh, I got a UV thing. It fixes everything. No, it doesn't. Okay. It helps keep a coil clean if it's where it should be placed and it's not breaking down insulation on the inside of your ductwork. And don't get me started on the halo systems. I'm not even going to talk about that because they just make me angry. But there's other ways to do that. So again, we have probes, we have all that sort of stuff. If you're getting an outboard purifier, it's offense and defense. So my contention is larger spaces, you need some offense, and you can control it, especially if it has any kind of ozone generation on there. You have to control that. You don't want to be in the house when that's going on. If you're going to be leaving and you want to take care of some smells, some stale air, things like that, great. And then you want to have a whole lot of defense. This is where you can go all over the map. I mean, the industry is loaded with purifiers, right? But again, it's the defense. So that's not what they don't tell you that you need both, okay? So you need something to attack the air, to bind the particulates that are in the air, especially the fine particulates for those sensitized individuals. If you're one of those people that can't handle stuff, you need offense and defense. But as a last part of this process, okay? So probes inside the ductwork at the coil, ionization, different levels of that. And again, we can test for any formaldehyde or any ozone effects in the house and quantify that for people that have any concerns with those things. Because again, it's going to be a trade-off. What's the trade-off? But if you have a lot of defense, that helps a lot of that, okay? But you want to attack the particulates in the air. You want to bind those particulates together, weigh them down, change the viability of whatever is on there through that process to make them be able to affect you less or more dormant. Then it weighs it down to either be filtered or cleaned. And if you already have a cleaning protocol and you got a filtration protocol, whether that's inline or a combination of that along with outboard purification, that's huge. So now you don't have as much available because you've already cleaned your house. You're managing what's in the air with your airflow. Your relative humidity is where it needs to be. You're getting a little bit of dilution from fresh air makeup. Then you're getting offense and defense. You see where this is going? Huge. And again, it's not any one thing. It's the process. It's the process. Okay. So with that said, if you implement all these things, it's going to help dramatically your living conditions and your overall air quality. Okay. This is all if there's no source. This is not even talking about history, which we talked about in our other episodes. That's first. If you got a source, if you've had mold, if you have bacterial issues, whatever, deal with that appropriately. Get your baseline where it is normal ecology for your area of what part of the country you're in first. Then do these things, okay? So allergen season kind of kicked this off. I hope that helps. Lastly, the fresh air makeup thing. I'm sorry. There's levels of that. Other than opening your window, when you don't have choices, like in our area, it's either really, really cold or really, really nasty and warm, or you got pollen or you got, debris or whatever. We'll probably have a whole podcast on this, but fresh air makeup mechanically. we get into ERV systems, we're going to get into HRV systems, we're going to get into positive pressure systems, which is what I'm a fan of in our area here. So that brings in filtered and conditioned air delivered at about 5 or 10 pascals coming in. You lose a little bit of energy, but you control what you bring in and you're diluting. The joke in the HVAC industry is dilution is a solution for pollution. It's not a joke. They actually, adhere to that. It's almost like a mantra. But, I was just at the conference at ASHRAE this year, and, we talked about all kinds of different things down there. But at the end of the day, I really, really, really think that most homes are going to go to that as a preventative solution with the building codes that are coming into play. So again, we're building houses to a D- as far as a score on the health side, if that. And other than the VOCs and the things we have to deal with, dilution is a solution for pollution. We'll talk about VOCs in another chapter. We'll talk about fresh air makeup and these positive pressure systems, but keep that under your hat, okay? That's coming. Hopefully all this helps, and stay healthy.